Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Organizational Intelligence in the Workplace digital event hosted by the CMI Malaysia Regional Board. My name is Lucia and I'm an events manager here at CMI. I will shortly be handing over to Taranjit Singh, Chair for the Regional Board of CMI Malaysia, to begin today's event. Today's session is being recorded and will be shared for those who book to attend, and it will also be available on the CMI website and the CMI YouTube channel. Now over to Taranjit to begin. Enjoy the session.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucia. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our second of the Beyond Leadership series for CMI Malaysia. My name is Taranjit, and I'm delighted to be the host of today's session. So there are immense uncertainties impacting the business world today, and there have been many business transformations, rejigging of business operating models, and there's a need to have deeper insights into the way organizations think, feel, and operate. And despite all that is being driven by organizational change management programs, as well as stakeholder management interventions, still critical projects are not taking root and giving the outcomes that is expected. Why is this so? What is not playing out? Together with this, a fundamental question of honesty is also at play. And right now, we are witnessing unparalleled times of a trust deficit. Yes, you heard me right, a trust deficit. Essentially, the social trust bank that the organization has is fast being depleted. And on most minds of the employees, the question is whether the organization leaders are being truthful to them or whether they are fabricating things in the interest of the few. Today, we are witnessing credibility gaps within the organization, whether they are large or small. And this now has a direct correlation to how people are being managed. A new form of intelligence is required, ladies and gentlemen, and that must link to the very organization's purpose. But more critically, in our mind, it must link to the promotion of trust at all levels in the organization. Organization intelligence has now become a critical component in contributing to success of companies in uncertain times, especially today. And in this session, ladies and gentlemen, entitled Organizational Intelligence and its Role in the Workplace, the Regional Board of CMI Malaysia is pleased to welcome two eminent speakers and a super moderator to the table. Let me quickly introduce you to them. Andras is the CEO of Maven 7, one of the leading companies in the organizational network analytics space. We call it ONA. He has over 20 years of experience in the HR and organizational development space and has been focused over the last decade in the area of ONA and social capital analysis. Andras is regarded as a leading exponent in the ONA space with over 200 projects, I beg your pardon, in this specific sector globally. He's passionate about bringing social capital and networks onto the agenda of HR, the management team, and more critically, the board. Andras is a global expert in the application of network analysis from an organizational perspective, specifically in change management, HRM practices, and improving organizational performance. Andras, welcome.
Thank you, Taranjit. Great to be here. It's really a pleasure. Looking forward to it.
Super. Next, we have Anupam Prakash. Anupam leads Maven 7 OgMapper business across APAC, and it's an integral part of the Maven 7 Global Advisory Board. He has over 30 years of experience across a variety of industries and verticals. He is a highly regarded leader with demonstrated experience in business strategy, HR transformation, global sourcing, managing businesses, and helping global organizations expand and establish business operations not only in India, but in the region at large. Anupam has coached and advised CXOs of Fortune 500 and mid-market related organizations, helping them grow their business, drive change and transformation. And that's critical today, ladies and gentlemen. Anupam has worked in leadership roles in best of class organizations, both at a local level in India, national level, and global level. He's a permanent consultant with the World Bank and has done projects in more than 30 countries. He has assisted state governments, national governments with country-wide branding interventions, location attractive strategies, and skill development projects. Anupam, welcome, my friend. And lastly, we have our distinguished moderator, Dr. Amina Kayani, a people-driven individual with excellent credentials. Dr. Amina has a foundation in accounting, HR, and strategic management with a focus specifically on talent development and performance management. Incidentally, these are the two key disciplines which are of utmost importance today, given what we are experiencing in the very uncertain world around us. Dr. Amina has a Bachelor of Accounting from the Melbourne University out in Australia, an MBA from the Ohio State University out in the US, and a doctorate in HR from Curtin University out in West Australia. The strong advocate that Dr. Amina is, she brings across the bridging of academic and industry and ensuring that there is a decent addressing of whatever gaps that there may be there. Transforming the education space, she is heavily involved in women empowerment, and she's always been a source of unconventional solutions, challenging the status quo. She is known for a candid perspective and comments, and in all honesty, ladies and gentlemen, I can think of no one better to moderate today's session than Dr. Amina. Dr. Amina, welcome. Now, with the speakers and the moderators firmly in place, I would like to pass the floor to the more than capable hands of Dr. Amina. Dr. Amina, over to you.
Thank you, Taranjit, for the introduction, and greetings to all dialed into the CMI event from all corners of the globe, in the UK, Hungary, India, Malaysia, and everywhere. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Now, do take a moment and let us know where you're dialing in from. We're interested to know. You can do that in the chat box or in the comments section in our channel. Now, thank you for taking the time to join this session today. Before we start firing at this amazing panel on the topic Organizational Intelligence and its roles in the workplace, allow me to introduce the panel session format. Each question will allow somewhat 5 minutes of commentary from the assigned panelists, and then we will have a Q&A session right at the end. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's cut to the chase. Question 1 is directed to Andras. It would be great to better understand the evolution of social sciences and how organization intelligence has come into being, and importantly, how that has led to the area of organization network analytics, ONA, as well as the other areas within the overarching sector of organizational behavior and leadership. Now, please describe to us, Andras, the evolution of this existing space. Over to you, Andras.
Thank you so much, Dr. Amina, and it's great to be here, and welcome everyone also. So first, I would like to start with a statement, and it's that organizations are social systems, and this is, I think, a strong starting point because obviously everyone knows that there are a lot of mechanisms in organizations to keep control of how things are getting done. You have the processes, you have the org charts, you have the reporting lines, the regulations, and all of that, which everyone is familiar with. But at the end of the day, people need to collaborate. They need to share knowledge with each other. They need to support each other to effectively get things done, right? So what this means is that you have a formal structure in the organization, and you have an informal connectivity beside the formal structures. And what all of this means is that both of these structures, they coexist, they do exist, they are there. And while you are familiar with your formal structures, hopefully you have an org chart, right? Are you familiar with your informal organization? Do you understand, who are the most influential, points in these networks? Do you understand where information is not going through, where are the silos, and all of the things that are happening and causing issues in terms of performance, productivity, innovation, and all of that. So that is what ONA is about. And how did all of this evolve over time is, if we just go back to the 1930s, that was the first time in history when a psychiatrist named Jacob Levi Moreno, he basically drew up a network of humans. And this network was actually coming from the Hudson School for Girls, where basically they asked him, can you, Mr. Moreno, look into why are some of the girls running away from this school? What's happening? What's causing all of this? And they understood that something's happening within the community. And basically, that was the first time that Moreno used sociometry, so mapping social connection, emotional ties in a community to understand what's going on in this group of girls. And what he came up with, what he found, is that the girls who didn't have emotional ties with the rest of the community were much more likely to be the ones who were next in running away. And that's actually one of the use cases for ONA nowadays as well. Not running away from schools, but people leaving organizations. Can we predict who will be next? So that's 1932. Then a lot of things happen. I don't want to go into the scientific literature on weak ties and structural holes that have an impact on innovation. And you must be familiar with 6 degrees of separation. All of the things were happening over the years. But I think one of the most important things that happened was internet. So people realizing how connected we are, and also having data to understand this type of connectivity. And that is actually one of our co-founders, Albert Laszlo Barabash, a scientist. He was the one who basically was able to understand how real-life networks work and the scale-free nature of these networks. So that was an important milestone in the evolution itself. But then I think the main stages of the development of ONA were first just visualizing connections and trying to understand them as they were MRI or X-ray imaging, looking into, okay, how does having connections or not having connections have an impact on the team effectiveness or knowledge sharing. The second stage was when the data was not coming from surveys and nominations, it was coming from big data. So it was coming from emails, calendar invites, how people actually collaborate, and the digital footprints of this collaboration that brought in a lot of opportunities, because you were not only being able to have a snapshot of what's happening, but you also were able to see the evolution of these networks and monitor the changes over time. And then I think that's when it all took off, and the methodology went into from the focus on the methodology itself to solving the problems of organizations. Like now that we're living in the age of constant change. And the organizations, as Taranjit explained at the introduction, are really struggling to make the adoption efficient. And there's a lot of new ways of working, new ways of collaborating. How can we speed up the adoption to these changes? Who are the key influencers we need to involve in the change? There's so many changes happening all at the same time, with mergers, acquisitions, reorganizations, new strategy rollouts, culture change, digital transformation, all of that at the same time. It's really hard to keep track of all of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I could go on,
Sounds
but
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds absolutely like an area not to be missed at all, Andras. Like I like your interesting use case about the community problem and how that went along by using data to dissect the problem. You see, um, uh, maybe we could go on to the next question to Anupam. Why do you think the area of O&A is important now more than ever? And what does it bring to the table from a practical perspective, Anupam?
Yes, Dr. Amina, thank you, and welcome everyone, the CMI participants. Delighted to be here. To answer this question, Dr. Amina, allow me to step back and let us look at work. As we know it today, highly complex organizations are large, they're disparate, they're dispersed, uh, they're live and talking, and they're very large in size. So they're spread all over the world. They're organizations that have 200,000 employees and even more. That's today. But let's step back and see when HR was invented, human resources, human capital, HR management. HR came about 300 years ago, almost, when the Industrial Revolution happened. So when Industrial Revolution happened, we had factories for the first time. People started working together. And when the factories came up, small offices around the factories came up because you needed a guy in accounts, in payroll, you needed someone in finance, etc., etc. So work started happening at that time, 253 years ago. HR was invented at that time. First, some administrative processes like payrolling and attendance, but then slowly it got into talent management and org structuring, org design. Slowly it developed. However, unfortunately, I'm an HR practitioner for many, many years myself and an HR consultant. I have to say that the pundits, the professors, and the practitioners continue to run HR as if it was an office of 20, 30, 50 people, all in one building, all being managed by their respective managers and all under a line of sight. We know that's not the case today. Technology has made us totally dispersed and people are working in a very connected environment. So straight away, it tells us that managers cannot have the line control. Command and line and command kind of structures, and they may not even know their teams because they're all disparate. And indeed, the team, which was so closely guarded by the manager, and that's a problem even today in large, modern, best-in-class companies, we do have the territorial issues, and that is why we have what we all know silos. People work within their department very well. They know their own team members. They don't know others with whom they have to work. And today, the customer and the regulation and competition demands you to be able to work across disciplines, across divisions, across departments, and produce goods and services which are not what you want to sell, but which are what customers want. And customers and competition put amazing pressure. So you definitely need to be collaborative. You need to work with other people. However, HR, traditional HR, doesn't allow you to measure that collaboration, doesn't allow you to see the dissemination. Andras spoke about the information flowing, doesn't allow you to measure the degree of centrality or the cohesiveness of a group, or what we call bridging and bonding capital. So very quickly, bridging capital is what connects you to someone in some other department. Bonding is what connects you to people in your own department. And both bridging and bonding capital are important. Now, HR, for example, doesn't have these terms, doesn't have this understanding. And why? It's not because traditional HR is not smart. It's because there was no technology to allow you to take that MRI, which Andras spoke about, of the organization. Today, it's very easy to visualize an organization beyond the org chart. So I'll grant you that HR, the only way to visualize the organization traditionally has been the organization chart. But people are saying the org chart is dead and work really happens behind the org chart. And we know that people have their own connections and they work in different ways. I'm sorry? So all of this.
I beg your pardon. It's okay.
Absolutely okay. So all these things required a science that would measure and visualize the organization in terms of influencers, in terms of communication, in terms of uh, a very important trait. Traditional HR says that capability is everything, but ONA says capability and connectivity are important, because if the leaders are not connected, they're not able to disseminate information, they're not able to influence others. So HR, for example, cannot measure connectivity, ONA can measure. So there's a very wide list of reasons and very many use cases of ONA that help build on the traditional HR, which is centered on human capital, versus work is done basis the absence or presence of social capital in the organization. And that is why, and that's what organizational intelligence is. So we are able to visualize the company, see where information is blocked, see who's interacting with their peers, who's innovating, not innovating. That is all available through an ONA intervention, and which is fairly simple to do.
Absolutely, that totally makes sense, Anupam. I like the fact that the terms of degree of centrality, as you pointed out, and cohesiveness basically underscores and summarizes the importance of ONA. Taranjit, the next question is for you. So, how do you see this area of organization intelligence playing out in Malaysia and Southeast Asia at large? Do you honestly see it being relevant here? Over to you, Taranjit.
Okay, thank you, Amina. Now that's a good one. So let's talk about it from a Malaysian context, or even APAC as a whole. In my mind, there are two fundamental pillars that are driving discussions today. The first one is around cost containment. We need to ensure that we are able to contain cost, because we don't know how long the current pandemic will last, nor do we understand the full implications of this. The second one, in my mind, is what is known as cash preservation. We need to go out there to ensure that we maintain our burn rate in the fashion which will able to tide us through, whether it be 18, 24 months from now. Now, with that in mind, it means that the way in which we have worked has changed. The way in which we are currently looking at our operating model has changed. Now, what then plays out are things like productivity studies are coming out, ensuring that we are able to maximize the ability to ensure that we get maximum mileage, but at the same time being empathetic. The area around changes in the office space. We are currently working from home. I mean, we are all working from home right now, just looking around the table that we have, the virtual table. How do we ensure that we're able to manage this effective output that is coming out in this fashion? Critically, we also feel, and this is my view, there is a trust deficit that is now very apparent. Do I honestly believe what my leaders are telling me, or are they saying the things because that's the right thing to say? What's the deal there? And if we think about things like the employee effectiveness surveys, things like employee engagement surveys, that's all nice, fine and dandy, and they have a relevance here. But the issue is, are we hitting those pressure points that are absolutely critical for us to understand what's playing out? And in my mind, the implication of this is several-fold. It's the way we communicate with people. It's not just communicating around the old water cooler, because there is no water cooler these days, but it's making sure that we are able to leverage off the individuals who have the maximum social capital within the organization and leverage off from them. So if you were to ask, and to your question, Amina, is it relevant? Absolutely. Do I honestly think it's worth our while to consider this? Absolutely. And more so today, because right now, as you know, the Asian approach is I don't say what I actually feel, because that's how we are as Asians, whether we are Thais or Indonesians or Malaysians or Filipino, whatever the deal. We don't really say what we actually feel. And so, how are we managing a situation where we don't have a finger on the pulse? It has to be through organizational intelligence, where effective analytics are now provided to managers to decide on what needs to be done moving forward. Does that answer the question, Dr. Amina?
Absolutely, Taranjit. There's just so many key points that you've pointed out. The pandemic uncertainty, containing the burn rate, managing effective output, trust deficit, and the implications, especially. And you really touch upon one of the most important points I felt, which is basically our culture and ability to actually come up and be forthcoming and direct with our communications, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go on to Andras. Andras, the next question is for you. Could you share with us some real examples of how O&A has been applied with your clients? We would really like to see and hear from you about how, your clients, perhaps you gave rise to insights that they could have not got otherwise. And then perhaps also you could share some examples related to areas that we are experiencing today. Maybe among things that we could relate to, such as impact of lockdown. Of course, everybody talks about that. And then the gender diversity, maybe also my favorite area. Erosion of innovation due to physical separation, work from home, well-being, and all that. Over to you, Andras.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Amina. Yes, I mean, over the years, we had many use cases of O&A, but just to highlight a few, maybe I would start with one where there were several use cases at the same time, because it was a mobile telco provider that has been acquired by another company. It was originally a Norwegian company, and it was acquired by a Czech company. And there was a lot of fear from the people that the culture is going to change in a bad way. They were used to a more agile way of doing things. So they basically said, okay, let's do something about the communication and how the leadership can have contact with the people more directly, so they understand what the fears are and also can work together with employees on building a new culture. So for that, they asked us to identify these key influencers coming from the organization network analysis survey. And then what they did is they involved them in culture programs, working on them to understand what type of changes they're looking for in terms of the new strategy that the new owner was looking for. But that was I think 2 years ago. And then COVID struck in. And then it was not really about the acquisition itself. It was already about, okay, people are really having troubles working from home. They don't have a computer. They feel disconnected. All sorts of things were happening at the same time. So that's where the mobilizers, these influencers, came in, and they were the ones who started to connect people. So getting computers from people who had computers at home are not using it, and distributing it to people who needed computers. They were the ones who were organizing, yoga classes for people so that they care about their well-being. And all these things, they were mobilizing, connecting people who otherwise would have been disconnected in these times. And then the impact of the lockdown, it's Anupam already mentioned bridging, bonding connections. We could already see that very clearly from our data, that the connections inside your team, they typically stay the same, or sometimes even get stronger, because you stick to your closer connections. But those connections which are outside of your own team, outside of your business unit, they just seem to disappear. This is what we call bridging connections. And why this is all important is this is what we're seeing with productivity going up. That's what we're also seeing with our clients. So people are, leaders are happy because, yeah, we're doing a good job, performance is going well, all of that. On the other hand, there is already a problem with innovation and engagement because of being disconnected. Uh, Obviously, when we're talking about innovation, and this is coming from also the work of Michael Arena, wrote the book Adaptive Space. He talks about this erosion of innovation with virtual work. When people, when they're working in the office, sometimes they just bump into each other when they're having a coffee in the kitchen, when they're in the hallway, and then they just start chatting like, I don't meet Taranjit every day, but these are the times when we can just exchange very different thoughts. And that's what happens in the office as well. And these are the types of connections that are not happening when we're fully online and fully virtual. So there needs to be ways, and intelligence can help with that, to figure out which are the teams who need to be in the office in certain times and which are the teams who need to be in the office at the same time, to be able to build these bridging connections in a smart way. And I don't know if I still have time for the diversity and inclusion parts, or should we?
Sure, maybe just a quick one.
Yeah, just a quick one. So we also see from the data that one of the things that is happening is that women who are working from home, they tend to get more disconnected than men, which is quite sad. That might be because of the role that they play, in their household. There's an additional role that comes in beside their workloads, which is causing this. But that is happening. You can see that from the data. You also see that from our data that while men, they tend to turn to other men 70% of the time, 70% of the connections when they're asking for advice are to other men, while for women it's 50-50. That you can clearly see the unconscious bias. You would ask a man, do you turn to men more than to women? No, that's not an issue. But if you look at the data, you will see that some of the more privileged groups, they are not realizing these behaviors. So that's where ONA comes in. You can actually measure inclusion, not only have a gut feel about it. You can use this intelligence and then work on it, obviously.
Wow, Andras, sounds very noble indeed, the kind of ideas that you brought to the table. You touch upon some areas that I would really like to take up with you offline and continue the conversation. Audience out there, for your information, Andras hails all the way from Budapest, Hungary. Whether that was mentioned. And Anupam is in New Delhi, India. Taranjit and myself are in Malaysia. And the Secretariat, Lucia, comes from London. So we're all over the place. Yes. Okay, let's go on to the fifth question. Given what has been shared by Andras, how can the area of organizational intelligence truly support managers and their effectiveness in the workplace? Anupam, this is a question for you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Amina. Yes, I think Andras set up a good platform for that. And also, I'd refer to my previous question that we need to manage, execute differently, because just the nature of work and the nature of the organization has changed. Since we've become so large, we need what we call influencers, just like, in social marketing, you need influencers and you have all these concepts of viral marketing and social media and all of that. So is the organization, the enterprise where ONA works, as ONA is dedicated to that space. We do have influencers. Now, influencers are very, very important people, and they can be called mobilizers, ambassadors, change agents. They're different words. The technical word is influencers. These people are very important for making the wheel go around, especially in the organization of today and more in the organization of tomorrow, as we become more distributed and more online. However, there is no scientific way except a small interview, and which is also very limiting. You can identify through interviews who might be an influencer, but how can you interview 1,000 people in a 10,000 people organization? The only way to find out who your influencers is through ONA. And ONA will allow the manager and the leadership to find the influencers in an organization. So to give you and to share with the audience some statistics or some thumb rules rather, influencers are defined as those 10 to 12% of your employee base that have a positive effect, that has an outreach that is trusted by 70 to 80% of your population. So that is the beauty of these influencers. To give you another thumb rule, the CEO and the executive team in general together can or generally influences only 10 to 12% of the employee base. So if there's a change that is happening, you're restructuring or you're introducing new technology or implementing new culture and values, if you want that change to happen, you definitely need to know who your influencers, your catalyzers, your mobilizers are. And again, with the power of ONA, the managers can identify those influencers. And these influencers, by the way, are not only in the top strata of the organization, they'll be in the manufacturing department, in supply chain, in warehouse. So they're all over the organization. And once these influencers have been identified, it's very easy to roll out your change and do the change management program effectively in a time-bound fashion. M&A is a great example where you, in a time-bound fashion, need to implement the change to get the synergies during the post-merger integration. Now, if you didn't know who your influencers are, your projects will be much slower. Similarly, managers again need to know and need to differentiate between capability, which is an individual trait, how capable you are, versus connectivity. Connectivity is not just someone knowing someone, as we say in networking broadly, but someone who's able to harness the power of others, someone who's able to contribute, is able to receive others' ideas, is able to work in a team. That connectivity is again not measurable in any other way than through ONA. And why connectivity is important? Because I go back earlier, the unit of work or the way work was discharged was an individual. Slowly it became teams, but today it's the network. Work happens through network, means a group of people who are not in a team even. They may be in other departments and they're not in a formal team. But if you do not understand and cannot visualize that network, you cannot execute the work as your customers want, as the regulator may want, as competition may force you to do. So when the unit of work is changing, the manager needs to understand how to visualize or measure or understand that. I think this is what I would say as a response to your question.
Thank you. Thank you, Anupam. Now, Andras, maneuvering oneself through the corporate game is not easy. How can fresh graduates or mid-career professionals apply the concept of organizational intelligence to further their understanding and appreciation of the workings of organization? What would your thoughts be on this, Andras?
Yes, thank you. Very good question. So actually, there was a very interesting research dating back to around 1992. I mentioned Ronald Burt. What he did is he took people who were participating in an MBA course and divided the class into two parts. For the first part of the class, he actually provided a training on how they can understand social capital around them in the groups they are in the organizations they are in. Like, how can you understand who are the experts in the team? Are they accessible to others? How diverse is your connectivity? Who are the influencers? How can you use that? What is the cohesion like in the group? And then the other group didn't receive this type of training. In 2 years, they went back to this group, these two groups, and look at where they are in the organizations that they are part of. And what they've seen is that in just 2 years, the people who were able to understand social capital and connectivity, they were sitting in higher roles in the hierarchy, and their performance appraisals were higher compared to those who haven't received this type of perspective or lens or tool. So yes, I think it would be actually quite useful for people at universities to learn about their own role in these networks. So I see three levels. One is my individual connectivity, me as a person. I have an ego network. How many connections I have? Are the people who give energy to me, are they close enough, or the de-energizing people, are they too close to me? Who are the people I need to reach out to or expand my diversity? And then you can also see, okay, this is my team. What are the problems in the cohesion of the team? Are there cliques that are sort of competing against each other? How can maybe I step in and make a connection between these two? And all of these things. So I just truly believe that, yes, it could help graduates and everyone to become a more useful part of an organization.
Okay. How are we for time? Okay, we have time. Let's go on to the next question. And the question is for Anupam. This is the penultimate question. And basically, it's about the growth of new areas and disciplines. And we all know that new disciplines will never be spared of challenges and barriers faced. What could be the challenges that may be faced or are being faced when looking at the growth within the area of organizational intelligence, Anupam?
Yes, Dr. Amina, I think Taranjeet wanted to add on to the previous point.
Yeah,
so,
could I? Yeah.
Sure.
So,
Sorry
yeah,
about that.
no worries, no worries. So just to add on to Andras's point, and I think he raised a good point about understanding the ecosystem. So I view the way this is playing out as an evolution. The earlier time, and I'm giving an example that Anupam normally talks about. We start off with an IQ, understanding the intelligence part of it, and then we go off into an EQ to talk about the emotional intelligence part. But yet we find that things are not still working out the way they need to. And that's where the OQ, organizational quotient, comes into play. Now, what I think is critical, just to add on to Andras's point, is the understanding about the ecosystem. And I do a lot of work in competency design and competency development. And one of the things that we talked about is stakeholder management. But that's actually quite old now. We are now talking about ecosystem crafting and ecosystem management. We are talking about individuals that I never knew existed before because they're sitting in different parts of the world. And my going in is just that. How do we, as fresh graduates, how do we, as mid-level career hires, how do we go out there to ensure that we're able to get this thing sorted? That's my contribution to that particular point.
Yeah. So, Dr. Amina, I'd also like to add, Andras talked about young MBA students getting there. We also have a Maven 7 Org Mapper Academy, where we work with both HR professionals in companies and enterprises and with students. And in Asia, we have launched, it will launch in June next month, a program which is tying up with the MBA students doing HR with one of the leading MBA institutions, top 10 in India. And we have begun discussions with others. So Org Mapper Academy, because Maven 7 is also in Malaysia, it's in Thailand, it's in Indonesia, Singapore. So we will be participating with the academia in developing a knowledge of this. Essentially because, HR has not been talking. Now, it goes back to my previous point. The HR academicians and practitioners who I was kind of indirectly criticizing for not having woken up in the last 300 years are now realizing this and are now making it a part of their curriculum. So I salute the academicians for understanding that ONA and network science and influencer management are important toolkits, and they're introducing it right at the academic level for MBA students and such like. And now to come to the question you asked, and I'll finish it because there are two challenges I feel. One is related to data privacy, but most companies, certainly our company, Maven 7, we are a European organization following very, very, very strict GDPR norms. And so we know how to secure data. We work in the European Union. We are a SaaS model. So if you're doing a project in Malaysia, it is governed by the same European regulation. The second challenge would be, we generate billions of data points for, Andras, you have that figure, how many network connections we have done, you were mentioning, 350 million,
yeah,
whatever.
hundreds of millions.
So, yeah. So the challenge here is to not get bogged down by data, but to have that data in a meaningful way to be able to understand it. And I'm again pleased to tell you, Maven 7 has very good visualization, front end, and reporting techniques which make the data meaningful to the manager. So I think these are the two issues, and we can solve for them quite easily. At least we feel as Maven 7, we are in position to service clients across the world.
Yeah, Anupam, when you spoke about the HR academics and practitioners that have woken up, I really felt that you really put the pin on the point, because I totally agree with you that they have to realize that it's so important to have a seat at that strategic table and to work with data and for insights and foresights, right? And I think this is where we can see the importance and the salience of technology in a meaningful manner with what you have, Maven 7, in the Org Mapper Academy. And we can't leave one discipline away from the other. We have to really have an integrated solution where you can get better insights into moving forward with a lot of matters. And with HR, I think it's just, an understatement that they are always left behind when it comes to strategic talks and discussions. And this is a time for them to step up and use technology to their advantage. Okay, I think we've come to the last question for the event. And the question goes like this. If there is one thing that you would leave our audience with in the area of organizational intelligence, what would it be? I'll have all three panelists answer it. So maybe we can start with Andras.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Amina. Yeah, maybe so the main thing I would leave everyone with is that I truly believe that the future of work will be built on collaboration and trust. And why? Because I think anything that can be automated will be automated. So we will be left with types of work where people need to collaborate, and everything that so the competitive edge will only come from connecting the minds of people, and being able to positively disrupt an organization requires trust and requires collaboration. So that's what I would like to leave here, is that the future of organization, future of work will need collaboration and trust. And those who have the tools to understand how this looks like will be ahead of those who don't.
How about you, Anupam?
You're on mute.
Yeah, my point would be to beseech HR managers, practitioners to change their performance management systems and their talent management models to not only reward people based on individual skills and capabilities and competencies, but reward people based on how they work with others, how open they are, how they receive information, how they give information, i.e. how they collaborate. Because only if they collaborate will they be able to deliver what the organization wants. No longer can you have a performance management system which rewards individual behavior, to Taranjeet's point, IQ and EQ, but also rewards OQ. If a person has high OQ, organizational quotient, he should be rewarded. Otherwise, we'll continue to work in silos, continue to be inward focused, continue to have our brand bigger than the firm's brand. There's a big problem in professional services firms, audit firms, legal firms, where sometimes the partner is bigger than the firm. This happens when you look at individuals and not groups and companies and colleagues and collaboration.
Good point.
Taranjit, finally.
Okay, so I thoroughly resonate with what Andras and Anupam has stated. My going in is everything today is interconnected and nothing happens in isolation. And I take that quote from Barabasi's Linked, his book. And if you've not had the opportunity, please go down, have a look at it. It gives you the oversight of how networks are formed. And no matter how small you think you are, the implication is absolutely amazing. And that's where the interconnectiveness makes the world even smaller. We've witnessed this not only over the past decade because of the internet and the ubiquitous use of your smartphones and what have you, but even more so today under the pandemic. My going in is then twofold. The decisions that you're making today has a direct correlation and impact on the others around you, and you cannot deny that. And we have to take accountability and responsibility for this as managers. And if I can provide this sort of in-depth, rich, colorful, innate information in this regard, wouldn't that be making us better managers as a whole? And that's where I'm coming from. It provides us with managerial effectiveness for carving out a future for us and the people around us. Dr. Amina?
Thank you. Thank you for the concluding remarks from all three of you. Without wasting any time, we have approximately 5 minutes left. We've got a few questions already tabled to us. And if you have any more questions, you're invited to actually send them directly over to the panelists. Their email addresses or LinkedIn address is over in the comment section. So the first question is from Shaminda. Is office intelligence the politically correct term for office politics? Who would like to answer that?
Yeah, I can take that. So yeah, I mean, it's sort of the short answer is yes, because it is. I mean, it is some kind of tool, some kind of perspective that allows you to be better at internal politics. That's one aspect. The other aspect, it provides you a lens and it provides you a tool to be more effective at your work and do a better job. But besides that, it also helps obviously for you to see like, okay, who are the people I need to get connected so that I'm more visible in the organization, so that they see that I'm doing a good job or all of that. So it's just that organization politics is one aspect of the whole application.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay, let's go to the next question. It's a question from Rohit. Do you think organizations are doing enough to upskill their employees to combat external challenges such as the pandemic, social and technological changes? So that's Rohit questions. Who would like to answer Rohit's question?
Can I take that, Dr. Amina?
Sure.
So I think there's a two-pronged approach to this. One is the accountability and responsibility on the part of the organization. And quite honestly, I think it's never enough. There's always something more we can do for the people that are working with us. Absolutely. It's about changing of SOPs as to how we work in the office, making sure that people have working laptops, ensuring that data is stored on the cloud rather than on-prem, so at least we have access to that. Absolutely. But I also feel that there is a responsibility on the part of the employee to ensure that he or she is driving what is expected of him or her for the future. Many times we feel that we are waiting for the employer to provide this to us. And my going in is not really. That should not be the case. What are we doing as employees, as individuals who are concerned in our own personal development? And so there is a two-pronged approach in this regard. And I think if you ask individuals hand on heart, how much have they invested in their own personal development in this regard? Put aside what the organization is doing, but just for themselves. And I think that's where that balancing equilibrium will come into play. Dr. Amina?
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Taranjit. Now, to quickly sum up, we have heard about O&A and organizational intelligence. Now, if any of you have any further questions or discussion, please reach out to the panelists directly. We have come to the end of the CMI event on organizational intelligence and its roles in the workplace. I would like to take this opportunity to quickly thank all of the members of the audience. Once again, thank you for joining us. CMI UK and Malaysia, Maven 7. I am Dr. Amina, your moderator for the event, and I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was the last question for today's session. I'd like to thank everyone who joined us and participated today. And thank you, Dr. Amina, for hosting, and Andras, Anupan, and Taranjit for sharing your insights and expertise with us. Such an interesting session. To our audience, if you're a member of CMI, I'd like to remind you that you can log into Management Direct by the link in the live chat box and find a wide range of exclusive and development resources and much more. If you're not yet a member, you can also join our community via the link that is also in the live chat box and gain full access to our Management Direct portal. Thank you all again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day. See you soon.